Close your eyes, just for a moment, and listen, not to my voice, but to what is happening inside you, right now. Do you hear it? It's not thoughts. It's something deeper, more ancient. It's a pulsation, a dull, rhythmic throbbing somewhere in the very core of your being. It makes your blood run through your veins. It draws air into your lungs and pushes it back out. It is the very mechanics of your existence. And now, open your eyes and look at your life, at all these desires that flare up in you like sparks. The thirst to possess, the fear of losing, the longing for another person, the gnawing anxiety about the future, the rage that rises like lava from some dark, uncontrollable vent within you. Do you still believe that this is you? That these are your consciously chosen goals? Your carefully nurtured passions? Your born in the crucible of reason? Will, what if I told you that all of this is just an echo? That you are merely a complex, sophisticated instrument played by a blind, faceless, relentless musician? That your conscious I, your personality, your mind is just a brightly lit stage where a play is being performed, directed by someone who never appears in the spotlight and never gives interviews? Over 150 years ago, a gloomy German philosopher, Arthur Schopenhauer, dared to look behind the scenes, and what he saw there forever changed philosophy. He called this direct to the world will, and today we too will sneak a peek into that darkness, because only by knowing your master can you hope to become even a little bit free. Part 1. The man who looked behind the curtain. To understand this idea, you need to understand the man who was so obsessed with it that he made it the center of his entire life. Arthur Schopenhauer, a man you probably imagine as a sullen, eternally dissatisfied misanthrope, and you wouldn't be far from the truth. But his pessimism is not the grumbling of an old man. It is not an intellectual pose. It is the result of a merciless, almost inhumanly sober analysis. It is a diagnosis given to the entire universe, a diagnosis that takes your breath away. Schopenhauer looked at the universe and asked not the question how is it structured, but the question what is it in its essence? What is the primordial force that makes galaxies spin, seeds sprout, tigers attack, and humans love, hate, create, and destroy? And his answer was stunningly simple and radical. He said, all of this is a manifestation of the same force, a blind, purposeless force that knows nothing except one thing: infinite, insatiable wanting, the will to life. Die Welt als Will und Vorstellung. The world as will and representation. Your body, with its instincts and desires, is not your body in any deep sense. It is how the will manifests itself, objectifies itself in you. Your brain, your reason is the most complex instrument the will has created to achieve its goals more effectively. You think you use your reason for your own purposes, but what if it's the other way around? What if the will uses your reason to achieve its goals about which you haven't the faintest idea? And that is precisely why, without understanding this force, you are doomed to be a puppet in a play whose script you haven't read. You will run with all your might, thinking you are choosing the direction, while you are simply being pulled by strings. Understanding the will is not just an intellectual exercise. It is the first, most important step to, if not cutting those strings, then at least loosening them. Part 2. The nature of the master. What is the will? So, let's get to know our master a little better. What is the will, according to Schopenhauer? First, the will is blind. It has no eyes, no plan, no design. It does not strive towards something. It simply is. It is the purest, unmediated, restless force. It wants to live because it cannot not want. Its existence is its action. Second, the will is one. It is not a collection of different desires. It is the same ocean beating against the shores of billions of separate forms. The force of gravity that pulls a stone to the ground. The sap that rises up a plant's stem towards the sun. The instinct of a wolf chasing its prey. And your most intimate, most irrational passion, these are all waves of the same ocean. We all, From the stone to the genius, are brothers in misfortune. We are all possessed by the same demon. Third, the will is ruthless. It absolutely does not care whether you are happy or suffering. Your personal tragedies, your joys, your love, your pain for it. This is just statistics, a byproduct of its eternal motion. You are expendable, disposable material in its endless game. And here is the most difficult thought to accept. All objective reality, mountains, rivers. This table, your own body, is merely representation. A dream dreamed by this blind will. We live inside the dream of a mad God. Part 3. The human condition. The pendulum of suffering and boredom, and from this metaphysics, a completely concrete, bleak picture of human life follows inevitably. Schopenhauer gives it to us in the form of a simple and elegant formula. The life of a human swings like a pendulum between suffering and boredom. Why is this so? Let's break down this mechanics. Suffering. This is our basic, default state. Why? Because the will is insatiable. It has no end point. You are hungry, you suffer. You want love, you suffer. You want success, recognition, money, you suffer. Suffering is the sensation of the tension of an unfulfilled will. Satisfaction. You finally get what you wanted. Food, sex, a promotion, a purchase. And for a very brief moment, the pain stops. The will quietens. But what replaces the pain? Boredom, emptiness, a feeling of meaninglessness. The will is asleep, and you have nowhere to direct your energy. You are bored, unbearably bored. And what happens next? That's right. The will awakens. It, this insatiable creature, demands new food. It creates a new desire, a new need in you, and the pendulum swings again. Back to suffering. Pleasure, says Schopenhauer, is not a positive value. It is merely the negative, temporary cessation of pain. You scratched an itch. It felt better. But that's not happiness. It's merely the short-term absence of unhappiness. And soon a new itch will appear. And you will scratch again. Part 4. The paths of salvation. How to loosen the strings so we are trapped by a blind and insatiable tyrant. Is there a way out? Schopenhauer proposes 3 paths of salvation. The first path, the respite. Art. Recall a moment when you were so absorbed in music that you forgot yourself. When a painting made you freeze, and you ceased to be just a viewer, and became pure perception. When a dance, a poem, a formula absorbed you completely. What happens in such moments? A miracle occurs. Your individual I with its petty, vain desires and fears falls silent. You step out of the stream of the will. You cease to be its slave and for a moment become a pure, will-less subject of knowledge. You no longer want. You simply see. You contemplate the eternal ideas standing behind the transient phenomena. This state is not happiness in the usual sense. It is peace, illumination, a foretaste of the freedom that awaits us at the end of the path. The second path, the moral path, compassion. The basis of Schopenhauer's ethics is not Kantian duty, not a calculation of benefit, but something much simpler and more fundamental. Compassion. But where does it come from in this world where the will drives us to selfishness, and the struggle of all against all? Schopenhauer's answer is brilliant. Compassion is possible because the distinction between me and you is illusory. It is merely the veil of Maya, as they would say in India. In the depths, beyond the world as representation, you and I are one. We are different manifestations of the same world will. And therefore, when I see your pain, it is not just someone else's pain. In some deepest, metaphysical sense, it is my pain. The same blind impulse that suffers in me, suffers in you. Compassion is not pity from above. It is a breakthrough through the wall of individuality. It is the realization of our deepest kinship in suffering. And this is no longer just a feeling. It is action. Action that denies the will to selfishness and affirms something greater. The third path, the path of renunciation, asceticism. And finally, the third path, the path for the bravest, the most desperate, the most enlightened, the path of the saint, the ascetic, the Buddhist arhat. This is the path not of temporarily lulling the will, as in art, nor of redirecting it, as in compassion. This is the path of its complete negation, self-renunciation. This is not about suicide. Suicide, according to Schopenhauer, is not a negation of the will, but its passionate, furious affirmation. It is the final act of despair, when the will, unable to bear suffering in this particular form, destroys it, but not itself. Genuine negation of the will is different. It is a voluntary, conscious, gradual refusal of its dictate, a refusal of lust, of greed, of anger, of vanity, of the very attachment to life itself. It is when a person looks all the temptations of the will in the face and says, "No, I will no longer be your puppet," and then something amazing happens. The will, no longer finding a point of support, soil for growth in this person, quietens, retreats. What remains? What Schopenhauer, following the mystics of the East, calls nothing. But this nothing is not the emptiness of non-being. It is peace, that very, longed-for, imperturbable peace that the war deprived us of all our lives, a state in which struggle ceases, pain subsides, the illusion of individuality dissipates. Nirvana. Liberation. Part 5. Your turn. The laboratory of self-knowledge. And now, after this long and, perhaps, gloomy journey, it is your turn. The turn for the most important question. A question I address not to the audience, but to you personally, to the one watching this right now. I want you to look inside yourself, not as a philosopher, but as a researcher of your own soul. Find the strongest, most burning, most obsessive desire that has possessed you lately. Maybe it's a love obsession that eats you from the inside, or a thirst for recognition that makes you bend over backwards, or a fear of poverty that poisons your everyday, or just a vague, but unbearable melancholy with no name. Take this desire and place it in front of you, like a test subject, and ask yourself, whose voice is this? Do you feel behind this impulse that very blind, irrational, faceless force? That did not arise from your reflections, but came as if from nowhere. Where are you in the cycle? Are you currently tormented by the suffering of dissatisfaction? Or, having achieved something, are you sinking into emptiness and boredom? Which path is closer to you? Could you temporarily diffuse this will by completely immersing yourself in music, nature, creativity? Could you see in other people, possessed by the same passions, your brothers in misfortune, and feel compassion for them? Or do you feel within yourself the strength for the most difficult task, the conscious, volitional refusal to obey this impulse, for asceticism? And I ask you, share this discovery in the comments. Let's create here not just a comment section, but a unique space, a club of former puppets, where we can honestly, without shame, tell each other about how we first saw the strings that pull our arms and legs. Which of the three paths of salvation seems the most realistic to you? Your sincerity could become that very ray of light in the darkness for someone else. Conclusion. The call to awakening. Schopenhauer's philosophy. It is so easy to mistake for a call to despair. But that is the greatest misconception. In reality, it is a call to the most radical awakening of which a human is capable. As long as you do not know about the will, you are in the position of a slave who sincerely believes he is dancing of his own free will. You are a prisoner who loves his chains because he has never seen beyond the walls of his cell. But the moment you learn about the will, everything changes. You wake up, you see the chains, you see the jailer. And this moment is the most important in your life, because from this moment on, your slavery ceases to be fate. It becomes a challenge. You cannot kill the ocean, but you can learn to swim. You cannot stop the storm, but you can learn to set your sails to use its power. You cannot destroy the will, but you can, step by step, day by day, learn to redirect its blind, destructive energy into the energy of creation, knowledge, and, ultimately, peace. Your life ceases to be a meaningless pursuit of mirages painted for you by the will. It becomes a conscious, heroic journey towards the only true goal, the goal of inner freedom. Freedom not from desires, but freedom within desires. The freedom to be not a slave, but the captain of your ship in a raging, but no longer frightening, rather majestic ocean of being. If this journey into the very foundations of human existence has resonated with you, and you want to continue exploring ideas capable of radically changing your perception of yourself and the world, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss our next meetings. Ahead of us are Nietzsche, Kierkegaard, Jung, and many other guides through the labyrinths of the human psyche and spirit. Thank you for being here today. Remember, the most important fight you will face is not a fight with the external world. It is the fight for the right to be the master in your own house, in the house of your own soul. I wish you strength and clarity on this path. Until we meet again on the air.